Daily life in Ren was a bit different because school ended at 6. So we'd go to school from 8 to 6, and we'd have lunch at a local high school. You could choose between 2 local high schools, and then I did tennis outside. So you can go out into Ren and sort of find what programs you want to do. People did dance programs, art programs, whatever you wanted. So I went out and played tennis. So on Tuesdays and Thursdays, after school, I'd probably go home, have a snack with my host sister. My job on the way home, sort of very stereotypically French, was to pick up the baguettes for, the next 24 hours. And so I got to know the bakery lady, I guess. And she would always ask me how my day was going, and I'd go home, have a snack with my host sister, and then head off to my tennis practice, where I was playing with a bunch of other local kids, which was really fun to sort of immerse yourself into the locals just without any sort of safety net of having, an American friend or anything, which was really awesome. And I did also join a women's team, which was also fun because they were more into correcting my French and helping me learn while we were playing tennis. And I played on a team, and it was really fun. I did tennis recruiting. So I was told before I went away, I had to choose, tennis or France, which one I wanted to do, and I just refused. So I said I did tennis in France, and then as soon as I got back, I just got right back into doing recruiting camps and talking to coaches, and I'm going to school for tennis. I'm going to be on the team, so it was just one thing that they told me I couldn't do, and it's not always true.
What stands out most to me is the coolest thing that I did was try and teach a class of 15 very small Italian children English. And just, they put you there and you're supposed to only speak English, and these kids don't speak a word of English. And somehow try and organize a game of Simon Says or Simone Dice. And it was pandemonium. I remember one kid just kept shouting, and so I told the nun who ran the school, this kid keeps shouting, and she smacked him, and I felt really bad. It was a wild experience. I mean, they used to escape from the classroom and go run around in the halls, and you have to corral them back. But it was an incredibly rewarding experience. So a lot of these kids really, really wanted to know English, and they'd come up to you and they'd use the 3 words that they knew, and you'd start sort of forming these really basic interactions with kids and start building this foundation. It was very cool, and you got paid.
And of course, as soon as you get there, everything leaves your head, and you stare blankly at them and don't know what to say. And I tried to sort of explain why we'd been so long and about the bus, and they just didn't quite get it, but my French wasn't quite there yet. But I had a sister who was a year older than me, and I think I just learned so much French from my family. I think that's where, because you learn the rules and the vocabulary in school, but your host family is really where you can put that to use. I would say invest in your relationship with your host family, because I think you learn the most from them, and that's the most rewarding relationship when you leave, to go back and visit them.
The biggest thing for me that I realized when I was on the plane was okay, I'm on this flight for the next 13 hours, and when I get off, what do? I drive to school for 45 minutes, and then I meet this family, and I go sleep at their house for the next 9 months. And that was frightening, and it was probably the most scared, not scared, but it was the most scared I've ever been in my whole life, probably, just making that realization as I sat down on the plane. And so it was about how it sounds. You meet a family and you sleep there, and they're not scared, they're excited to have you, but you're definitely frightened. So the next morning I woke up, and the first noteworthy thing I did in my host house was clog the toilet. And we didn't have a plunger. So that day was spent finding a plunger, and I unclogged the toilet and quickly patched things up. Overall, the host family is really an incredible asset. You might be scared to ask them questions, just seeming like a stupid American or whatever you think in your head that they'll think of you. But they won't. I mean, they know that you're not Chinese, or they know that you're not French or Spanish or Italian, so they're gonna get it, and I think the sooner you realize that, the better your relationship will be with them. The more you just open up and just ask them whatever you're thinking, or just say what's on your mind.
I remember when I was driving, like probably the second week I was in Italy, I was driving with my new host mother, and she was telling me about how she was gonna give me this bicycle so I could ride to school. And she said, if you don't put on the helmet, I will take the bicycle away and you'll never see the bicycle again. And then in my very broken Italian, I told her that my mother in America does the same thing to me. And I remember her saying, yeah, like, mothers everywhere, they're all the same. It doesn't matter, Italian, American, we're all the same breed. That struck me as significant just because there's just, people are people.
Testing was actually very easy to sort of plan out, and they help you with that, which was great. And then I was back in my high school this past year for senior year, and SYA has definitely influenced my college process a lot. My Common App essay was all about my year in France, and yeah, I think it sort of showed me what I wanted and what I wanted to study. I want to study cultural anthropology and French, so it fits quite well.
In terms of like I'm not through the process yet, so I don't know fully what it's gonna be like having gone to SYA and doing the whole college thing, but I know when I went, that was one of the main things I was concerned about. And once I got there, I was like, all right, the only thing I can really do over here is take the SAT, take APs, like get through the testing part. And I got home and I was like, all right, let's like catch up, let's see what I missed. And they were like, did you take the SAT? And I said, yes. And we talked about that, and that was really all you make your college list in whatever junior year, but you don't miss that much junior year being away, except for the stress, like everyone freaking out about college.
And that's a good thing to miss.
Exactly, yeah. So I'm kind of happy I wasn't here this year, because I think I would have been going a little insane if I had to hear about it every day. So I think it's kind of healthy being away during the college process. And I think what you lose, like, I guess you lose a year of American school or whatever. But I think, also you were in wherever you were in China for a year. That's pretty cool on a college app. It looks pretty good, and I think people like to see that. It's definitely not a thing a ton of people do. So I think it's definitely going to be a pro in the eventual, college process.
Starting in France my junior year, they were on us. We took the PSAT, the SAT. We had a really good college counselor who was from the US. And they did everything that I guess an American high school would do to help you prepare. And then when I was in China first semester, that's when it really started. And I guess it's a little bit unique for me because I was applying to NYU's campus in Shanghai. So I was already in the country and actually got to go down to Shanghai for a few days for their admitted students weekend. But no, the whole process went very smoothly, and definitely felt that there was more than adequate support in that realm, yeah.
You sort of want to spend your time with your new friends and exploring the country where you're in. You don't really want to go back to America because you're going to go back in 9 months' time, so you only have 9 months in this country. You might as well make the most of it. And honestly, when you get back, you just ring up your friends and they want to hear, about your experience, and it's tough going back. If I'm going to be honest, it's not, you missed a year. But if they're, good friends, they're not just going to suddenly stop talking to you or stop being your friends, and they'll want to hear about your experience. And you do find it takes a while, but you do find your way and you find your place back with your friends in America.
My advice would be, and I think it kind of encompasses everything, but it's just forget about your life before. Don't fully forget that you have a mom and dad or whatever, but like forget about your life before SYA. Like don't spend the first morning like getting on Facebook and seeing like, oh, what's everyone up to? Like that's not gonna make your year go well. It's only gonna make you miss home more, and it's like unhealthy to do that. So I think just kind of focus on where you are, focus on because you're a long way from America. You're not gonna be back there soon. So I think just focus on where you are, speak the language other people are speaking, like don't find the like one American restaurant within a 50-mile radius and like find a way to get there. Just concentrate on where you are and what you went there for. Don't, waste all your time dwelling on what you might have done back in America. I think you have to find a healthy amount to speak with your family and your friends. For me, that was every Sunday night I would Skype with my parents, for a little bit and just keep them posted. You don't want them to forget about you. You don't want to forget about your parents. But that also goes for your friends. Send them a picture every once in a while. Be like, hey, I went to this place, or this is what I'm doing this week. And in terms of coming back, I think it's like being away for 9 months is a good way to find out who your real friends are, which luckily the people I thought who were my real friends were my real friends. But it definitely is a good way because you find out who actually cares, and people I didn't expect to care about what I did are coming up to me and asking me, hey, like, how was it? Let's talk sometime about, your year. And I think that's awesome, so you really find out who cares about you, and sometimes it surprises you once you get back.
Just lose all of your pride. You're going to make an absolute, you're going to make a fool of yourself, and that's, I think, the best part of this experience is just constantly, is the ability to, after 9 months, look back and be like, I can't believe I ever said that, or I can't believe that I ever got on that train that wasn't going in the right direction. That one's personal. But just, having no fear to look like just an idiot. And you'll be much wiser for that.
In France, I remember this was a long time ago, but I was just so excited every single day. My host family lived quite close to school, and they provided me with their own son who was studying at that point, not at home. I used his bike, and I rode to school every single morning. I got a little tarte aux pommes and arrived at school. Classes were busy, and I was very, very, very tired at the end of every single day, just spending the entire day using French, thinking in French. It's exhausting, and it's the best type of exhausting because you know that you've been spending such good and positive energy throughout the entire day, but nonetheless, it's tiring. And then after school, I would like to say that I had like a tennis or an activity like that, but no, in the first semester, I definitely didn't. It was all about going out with friends, seeing the city, riding my bike into town, going to bookshops, cafes, out to dinner, which was definitely a lot different from my life at Pingree. I was living in the suburbs. I had to have my parents drive me to school every single day and then pick me up. But here I had just this new freedom. It was so tangible. It was so real. And every single day I was really living. In China, it was definitely a lot different, but it was similar in the way that I had freedom, albeit quite different. I would wake up in the morning, and my house was also quite close to school, but I would have to put on my uniform every single day. And I'm sure everybody's seen the pictures of the famous xiaofu, which is the name of which just means school uniform. And through whether it was sunny or polluted, I had to get up every single morning and have a great breakfast made by my host mom. And a lot of mornings, my host dad would put the Chinese newspaper out in front of me, and it was quite daunting, and he would be like, read me a paragraph of this before school just to get my head in the game. And at the same time, I would also be stressed out because we also had two dictations every single morning, so those characters are running through my head. Those characters are also running through my head, and the Chinese TV is blaring in the background, and I'm walking to school. And I would arrive, and we would have very intense Chinese class. First thing in the morning, so you are there, you need to be sharp the second you arrive at school. And you're also very tired at the end of the day, as you can imagine. But Beijing is a lot larger than Rennes, of course, but also just the opportunity to go out in the city, take the bus, take the subway, where Rennes only has one subway line. Beijing has what, 20, something like that. A lot, it's a big subway, it's a lot different. But both places were incredible in their own way. Parlez français, 说中文, speak the language as much as you can. It's everywhere, and you will regret it if you do not speak it as much as humanly possible, because the second you get home, you will want to speak it, and you will miss it so much. It's everywhere, it's all around you, and everybody's waiting for you to speak it with them. So go ahead and do it, and don't be shy. Make as many mistakes as you can, and after you make bad mistakes, you will never make the same ones again, for sure. You will remember forever. Yeah, that's my biggest piece of advice.
So many of our students tell us that their perception of what Italy is like, or what an Italian is going to be like, is more based on Italian Americans portrayed in these movies. How was that true with you? And if so, how were they actually different? It's a generalization, but it might just stimulate some of those aha moments you get when you're over there.
Yeah, there's definitely a huge sort of cultural footprint that Italy has in America, which is, I mean, for me, I was expecting no one to, all of this, and yeah, and scooters everywhere, and and there is truth to that stereotype, but
We encourage our students to depend on the resources that are available to them there. So between the teachers they've met, their advisor, their host families, all of those are challenging because they're people they've just met. But the key, I think, is to encourage them to break away from the resources they're used to and to use the ones that are on site. And the students that are able to do that find the adjustment often easier and sometimes more satisfying. That's not a universal, but that's the advice we give them, and then we provide those resources for them when we can.
So at SYA, I think you all know by now our purpose is to provide our students with a challenging educational experience abroad, that really cultivates curiosity beyond books and I think beyond borders, and fosters maturity, some independence, and a good deal of sort of transformation, and particularly understanding, interpersonal understanding with people from different cultural backgrounds. All of your children have completed the rigorous admissions process, and I think you sense, because otherwise you wouldn't have signed on the dotted line, that they're mature enough to do this, to leave you, and to do so always in a supportive environment where we too are looking out for them. So please know that is true, that's real, and I think having heard from students, I think that's probably comforting to you. Some of you have children in boarding schools. I was a boarding school educator for a long time. My own daughter went to boarding school, and yeah, you've already experienced some of that parenting from afar. But of course, SYA is a little bit like, boarding school parenting on steroids. It's a time zone difference and, language differences. And in boarding school, they're not given to another family, and so there's a real difference there in dorms, of course, but so it is different, but we really think that it is for the better. And having been in both of these contexts, I feel that really is the case. So your children are ready to go. And to sort of take that leap of faith and spend a year with us. But the real question is, are you, right? And I think that's harder sometimes for the adults than it is for the students. Busy time, you have a student-parent handbook. Certainly that's something that you'll want to spend some time with, get yourself familiar with that. But it never has all the answers, but it's a nice reference guide. So today we're going to just address some of probably the topics that we think are most interesting to you. A little bit about host family, a little bit about communication, about the co-curricular reality from a parent perspective, and also speak about health and safety, which is our top priority, and I know it's always on the minds, probably top on the minds of parents.
First and foremost, welcome everyone, and I would like to acknowledge that this causes a tremendous amount of anxiety, right? I mean, sending your child off to a different country, thousands of miles away, and the worst of it all is really sort of sending your child to a host family that you don't know. I would like to take that opportunity to thank you all, to all of you. A very big thank you for your trust in us. Because it takes a leap of faith to do what you're about to do. And I can't even imagine that some of your friends, family friends, might even have suggested to you what you're going to send your child to China. You know, and then you are faced with a situation. I mean, how am I going to justify this? I would like to start by pointing out that I hope that you understand that selecting host families and matching them with students is more an art than a science. It's based on tons of experience, on local knowledge. And when I talk about local knowledge, Eileen mentioned the host family coordinator, and I think that person plays a huge role. Okay, so what happens is, and I want to talk to you a little bit about the process here. What happens is, over the summer, the host family coordinator, in my case it's Miss Zhang Min, and I will get together, and we will have many meetings, and we have read all the files, right? The host families we do know, right? And so we spent quite a significant amount of time and sort of, you know, we're having a discussion about, you know, what do you think, you know, this family and that student, and then we sort of begin the process of mixing, matching students with host families. We do have a very high success rate. But at the same time, sometimes it just doesn't work out. That can happen as well. And in those cases, if it really doesn't work out, then we will make a host family switch. But sometimes, parents sometimes say, oh, yeah. A good host family experience is one where there are no problems. That is not quite the case. Sometimes there are going to be issues, and most of the issues are really based on miscommunication, language barriers, translation issues, things like that. And oftentimes a really good host family experience requires some work, like any relationship would, right? It is a two-way street, and oftentimes, I remember vividly a year ago, I had a student who, in October came to me and she said, Bailaoshi, that's the way students address us in Chinese, and she said, it really, there's this problem with my host family. And then the host family coordinator and I, who's available throughout the year, we will then talk with the student and work and help the student if there are any issues in a host family. All right. So it's not like there's a problem and the student is left alone. All right. There's an entire network of people who will assist students whenever they encounter a problem, and oftentimes you will see by the end of the year, it's really incredible when students by the end of the year go back to the United States. Everyone is in tears. The host families, they're crying, and your son or your daughter has become an inextricable part of their family.
I don't envy you right now, but it turns out fabulously, and I think it's important to, especially in this day and age of emails and Skyping, and that you let your child make their own relationship with their host family, and that you don't try to micromanage that at all. Because that isn't going to work for you, and it's definitely not going to work for your child. And I think that in some ways, this experience is like when your child is learning how to climb upstairs. You want to be behind them, and you want to catch them if they really fall. But they need to have the confidence to take those steps and to get the muscles that they need to make it a good passage. And we've done this twice now, and the host families were very different, and that was a remarkable and lovely experience in both cases. And I think there's definitely rhythms in a year. There's rhythms with any child in a year, but a 16 or 17-year-old is going to have rhythms no matter what, and they're going to have that rhythm with their host family just like they're going to have it with you, and they need that, those experiences. And we've also hosted somebody, an assist student, and it just takes time, and there's so many different layers. And by the end, it's fabulous, and I would encourage you to buy your tickets and go visit if you can, because the adventures that we've had as a family with our child's host family is something I can tell you about in the tent. They are fabulous, and I think, it's a very unique and priceless relationship.
I agree with what you just said. Denny will remember that with my daughter, she's sort of a straight arrow type. We have 3 kids, and early on, there was an incident where a child of their host family did something that shouldn't have been done, and my daughter got very upset about it. She called us, and we said the same thing. We said, you've got to sit down with the mother and father and the family and just talk about this and see what it is. And then you also need to tell the SYA people, and she did that. And actually, the problem became an incredible bonding experience, and she got much closer to her host family as a result of doing that than if she had not done that. And she is now, she'd move in with them in a heartbeat if we let her do it. She's very close to her host family, and she loves them, and she was full of tears, as you said, when she left, and they're very close. And so it was a very interesting experience. But I think letting your child set the relationship and not trying to dictate it yourself from afar is the key thing, because otherwise it's almost impossible, I think, if you don't let them do that. So
we do insist right from the very beginning that we can enter in communication with your son and daughter, in a sense that it's integral at first that they have some ways, if we need to reach them, if we need to make them appraise of something, to be able to be communicative that way, So, but in terms of communication to the outside, it's a blessing, and it can also be, sometimes it can impede the process a bit. I guess I would recommend to parents some kind of, I think it's important to communicate. It's silly to say that, it's integral, and I think to be able to do so on fixed times, to get a sense of the flow, I think it's vital, and I think it can be mutually beneficial. I certainly, as an RT, I very much appreciate, sometimes you'll hear things from your son or daughter that you may wish to communicate to me. I think we're after the same goal. We want the year to be a superb experience. So certainly making me aware of something that perhaps I'm not yet to me, is just good business. I will put it that way. But the point is that I think some measure of, or some balance, I would say, in intercommunication is what I would suggest. Because otherwise you can't coexist in 2 places at once. We don't live in this kind of universe. So let's, the whole point of coming to France is for the student to experience, and therefore I think you're there for the sage advice. You're there for when there's some doubt or where there's some, shaky moments. But again, remember this as a joint venture, and let's try to control a little bit the flow. That would be my first suggestion.
I think we did try to step back a bit and not necessarily communicate every day, but we did, we talked probably once a week with her, and then anytime anything came up that was troublesome to her or anything she was really excited about, if she wanted to contact us, that was fine. But we tried to let her sort of carve out her own space. She went over, and I know each kid is somewhat different, but she went over very, very excited about diving into the culture over there and speaking French and not speaking English. And so we wanted, at the start, we wanted to give her enough time to try to get started with all of that. And she generally adapted pretty well and got along with the family. So there weren't huge issues that arose for us. So. A lot of Alice's extra activities, well, first of all, let me just say that one of the great things about the program was the closeness she got to her friends who were there. She enjoyed the other kids who were there immensely, and she still has close friends. In fact, a couple of them are at college with her too, which they didn't know was going to happen. But a lot of her activity occurred with her host family. The grandfather, the wife's father of the family, was a very successful businessman in Brittany, and they would often go out on weekends and go visit them and see them, and so she did that. The other thing is our daughter is a foodie. She loves to cook, and so she would go to the farmer's market every weekend with the mother who was there, and she'd pick up food and they'd cook over the weekends and do things like that. And so that she sort of just loved to dive into the French culture, and that was more of it. There weren't, she didn't do formal sports or other things. She ran every day because she's a runner, but she did that on her own. She didn't do that with a team.
It's a different context, of course, but, Rennes happens to be a city that thinks much larger than the size that it is. No, right from the very beginning, as a matter of fact, it's an incredible wealth of resources. The students are given a publication that's called ABC de la Rentrée. It has every possible activity that you could come up with. And we have a coordinator that will assist the students to find something that may be interesting to pursue. Sometimes, obviously, what's present here in this country, particularly in certain sports, is not always immediately accessible. There's field hockey doesn't really exist as such, for instance. I'll just give that as an example. But there are some other things that resemble it. And so in terms of sports, again, there's the full range. They often have to try out for the sports, but in terms of the others, we have someone dedicated to facilitate the process of adhering to an activity. We also involve the host families, because sometimes a student may select an activity, that may be appealing. 2 or 3 locations may be available. It might be a good idea to make sure that it's something that's feasible in terms of distance, accessibility, and so on. And usually things evolve. So we're very supportive that way, but we really encourage them to select an activity in which they will commit themselves. There's also a great deal of other activities that exist that we favor, certainly in terms of community service and so on. We have a very successful program of working with the elderly in retirement homes. And so students basically will adopt a grandmother or grandfather and really become committed to that particular process. And that's been very exciting. We now extended to 10 different retirement homes in Rennes. And as a matter of fact, the key to one thing, I heard a French family say to their grandchildren, they say, we have American students visiting your grandmother and you don't show up, And so they said, shame on you, it takes somebody from across the Atlantic to give your grandmother the kind of, at any rate. But overall, again, we have some opportunities to work with the Institut Franco-Américain. They can work with younger children. There's some reading groups. There's also some discussion groups with lycéens of their age. So there's a whole range of activities, I think, that the students can get involved in.
My sense is that, and also hearing from Tyler's friends on SYA, is that if you have passions about, if the student is a flutist or whatever, they can find what they can find somebody to work with. So it's just a question of their motivation. And I think Tyler definitely, you had asked, like, did it spawn new interest and things like that? And Tyler never had tutored or done anything like that before, and he continued it in Spain. So I think it's an opportunity for kids to try on different things, and some will do tennis like they have always done and broaden their horizons in that way. It's the same thing, but it's all different. Same activity, but all different because it's a different cast of characters and different. And but I think all kinds of things can happen. I think that's the main thing. And you either got to decide to whether you're going to push it or whether you're going to let them find it. And my feeling is good things happen when you step back a little bit and not to be so obsessed by the college process that they have to do X, Y, and Z extracurricular.
We, of course, try to create activities for students that allow them really to immerse themselves in the local community. So we're right next to our school. We have also a local community center, and it's just adorable to see the interaction among our students with the members of that local community center who are mostly retired, but very, very active, and some of our students teach these retirees English, and in return the locals teach our kids cooking. So it's a win-win situation all around. We also have what we call a language exchange program. We have a multitude of other service opportunities. We have some fantastic relations to a school for autistic children in Kunming in Yunnan province in southwestern China. In February, we will take a trip there, and we will spend an entire day with that particular school. So we try to do some fundraising. The kids bake cookies and sell them, and hence we are able to support that particular school in Kunming, for example. So these are just a few examples of a broad range of activities that students can get involved in. While some of the more regular activities such as fencing or horseback riding might be available, are of course available here, but might not be available in China. I think one should keep in mind that there are many, many other things that students will gain by being in China and by getting engaged in activities and service opportunities in Beijing.
We monitor proactively anything that's going on the minute any sort of news comes in, and I don't just get my information from news sources. Anytime we have a sense that something might be happening in country and there's a possibility that any of our students would be in the vicinity, it just automatically, there's a team in the home office of about 5 or 6 people, as well as a team in the school that is conferring with each other, and we have a plan to make sure that we're working very closely with marketing communications who are experts on sort of leading in that realm. And we have many constituents. First and foremost, whoever the child comes first, the safety of the child is the #1 driver. Once that's ensured, then it's a matter of making sure that everybody who needs to, everyone is informed. And at SYA, we're a very complex constellation because it's not just your child and you. It's your child, you, the host families, the sending schools. We have to make sure that any school that has sent a child to SYA is also informed about what's going on and what we're doing. And so certainly we try to be, and Denny and I were on, basically with a team, we were on the phone steadily planning, making sure that the kids are following the directions. If it was shelter in place, that they knew that. And that literally almost every half an hour, we manage it until it's quieted down and the kids are safely back.
Yeah, if I just may add, I mean, we're both proactive and reactive in the sense that we have policies firmly into place that anticipate, eventualities, but then when you're faced with a fait accompli, then you react to the situation. So the first thing, of course, is that we take stock, we figure out exactly where all the elements are. And I would say it was a wonderfully concerted effort, and I think it reinforced all, we immediately inform everyone. So there's a sense of relationship, at least this way, dealing with the facts, and then we process through. And, of course, those are such turbulent events, and, and the nature of which has changed. It's become, at any rate, so we keep an open eye. We always try to stay 2 steps ahead and take it from there.